Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Left versus Right. Left and Right? We'll figure it out later. The podcast or minicast where we discuss comic books, manga, compare and contrast, or sequential art in general. I'm your host, and I'll be starting on the left.
And I'm Cole. I'm the guest. I will be starting on the right.
Right. So, what you been reading?
What have I been reading? I've been reading this since about 3 years ago, and it's an ongoing manga series called Berserk.
I've heard of Berserk. I've heard good things about it.
Uh-huh. And what have you been reading?
The last thing that I currently read was Guardian Devil. It's a Daredevil story by Kevin Smith. It's pretty good. It's a bit controversial. No, it's not controversial, actually. I looked it up, and it's pretty well received altogether. People laud it as like this grand Daredevil story, but I was very middling on the whole thing.
Okay.
You talk about Berserk now.
Oh, well, I was gonna take a second. My philosophy about knowing about things in series is if you can't describe it in 3 sentences, you don't know it well enough. So, hit me with a 3-sentence.
Okay. Matt Murdock is conned into believing that he is the savior of the new Messiah, but it turns out to all be smoke and mirrors by a mysterious hidden party determined to drive him insane.
Okay. I will do Berserk, I guess. Big man with a big sword cuts down big demons and also suffers a lot.
I've heard as much. Daredevil suffers too. Matt Murdock's entire life is just this never-ending toilet storm of pain and misery. Everybody he loves or cares for dies, is disbarred, is diagnosed with cancer, is resurrected and then dies again, or just irreparably and permanently just sees him as an enemy or has been betrayed by him indirectly in some way.
He sounds like a bit of a bad luck anchor.
He is, definitely. Somebody just said, let's look at Spider-Man's life where he's this perpetual loser and then just throw him in the dumpster. And I think one point he was possessed by an evil Japanese spirit, but I think they just did that to explain why he was being such an asshole for the last year or two of comics.
Oh.
I think this is after he carved a bullseye into Bullseye's forehead as punishment for killing Elektra and his other girlfriend, Karen Page. Bullseye does a lot of murder.
Yeah.
And also to make him look like Colin Farrell in the 2002 movie, because that was, something we obviously had to do and draw parallels to.
Of course. Fair enough. What would you say the core values of Daredevil? Sorry, what? Hit me with the title again.
Daredevil, Guardian Devil.
Guardian Devil.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say kind of the core philosophy? Because every piece of literature kind of tries to espouse a philosophy.
Right.
So what would you say the core kind of ideal of that is?
Well, a big part of Guardian Devil is just how it pulls the rug out from underneath you in the last 2 books in the story. But I think the idea is maintaining your faith even at the worst of times. And also Daredevil and Black Widow boned once?
Okay, so if you're a bit of a stoic and you maintain what's called ataraxia,
right,
and a cheerful optimism even in the worst of situations, you can one day shag the Black Widow.
That's pretty solid. That's a solid goal to reach for.
Yeah.
How about Berserk? I know the main character's name is Guts. What drives him?
Guts is driven. He's an interesting man. He's driven by a mixture of things, and that changes throughout the story. At first, it's just all-consuming revenge,
right? Because
spoilers occur, and then
I'm deep into spoiler territory with my stuff.
Okay, all right then.
Skip ahead to this part if you don't want to hear Berserk spoilers. Bing! Okay, now go.
All right. So, Guts, even since he was a child, he's had different motivations. He was pretty much unwanted by everyone except his mercenary father, who only really wanted him for how much money he made him. And his motivation before he ended up finding all of his friends in the Band of the Hawk was just surviving, because that's all he was good at and all he really wanted.
Right.
He meets his friends at the Band of the Hawk and falls in love with one of them, Casca, and it's great. And
I know
you're seeing the pieces fall into place here. Casca and his best friend Griffith.
Oh boy, Griffith!
And nothing bad ever happens to them until everything bad happens to them.
How early on does the big Griffith twist occur? Is that one of his core things, or
It happens very well early enough. This series has been going on since '89.
I know.
Either of us have been born.
I'm pretty sure like at least one of these characters just went on a boat and is currently canonically still on the boat.
He got off the boat.
He got off the boat.
He got off the boat.
Great.
Yep. Nope. Guts got off the boat, although it's gone back on hiatus, so the creator Kentaro Miura can play more idle games.
Okay, is that what he's been doing?
I honestly don't know, but yes, it is back on hiatus. Hooray!
Like this guy makes George R.R. Martin look like Bush League numbers.
Yeah, that's the thing. Guts was first all about revenge, and then he started meeting new friends, and he's actually now driven by making the world a better place for his friends, and also murdering Griffith.
That's like two solid goals to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Daredevil has always just been like, got to protect the helpless, use my... I think he just like seeks justice any way that he can, as a lawyer by day and as a daredevil by night.
So he kind of sees the wrong in society and he wants to do something about it.
Yeah, the Netflix series actually gave me a really good point. Like, I'm sure this has been covered in a story before. Netflix picked it up, but the core aspect of Daredevil's character, like, he has such a cool superpower. Like, he has perception. That's his power. He has detective vision on all the time. He can see everything. Oh, he can't see anything.
Can he see why kids love the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
But he can smell it.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he can smell everything. He can hear everything. And just like pretty much nothing escapes his notice. And the reason he first put on the outfit and beat the stuffing out of a guy is because he was living like next door to him and could hear him going into his daughter's room at night.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the thing is, he could hear it happening every night.
Oh, buddy.
And that's the nature of it. So, of course, like, he just collapses the man's chest cavity.
Good call.
Yeah. And it's just like the core motivation of Daredevil is that he can hear all this awful shit happening and he just can't turn a blind eye to it. Well, he can because he has blind eyes in his head, but he can't turn a deaf ear to it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So he has no choice to shut out all the bad stuff that happens.
Yeah, he tries to, but like still, if it's there and you do nothing, like doesn't that make you at least a little bit culpable?
Yeah, well, I could also say it's like an old guy shaking his cane at the kids on his lawn. He just wants them to shut up.
It's like weaponized Catholic guilt.
It's like he's getting really tired of the people downstairs playing music, so he's finally coming downstairs and just beating the shit out of these damn kids.
You're describing the plot of Catwoman, the Halle Berry movie.
Fair enough.
Oh, God.
Now, you did mention the Netflix adaptation. Does that follow this, or does that follow something else?
No, the Netflix is like doing its own thing.
Okay.
It's set within the Marvel universe, like the MCU.
Okay.
Like they're actually
Marvel Cinematic Universe.
The MCU, yeah. Contact us. We'll plug your shows as much as you like.
Yeah.
We want to sell out.
Yeah, please.
Let us sell out.
Or even better, put us in those shows and movies.
Yeah.
We're actors. We can act.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's set in the MCU, and like they're telling their own story based off of a lot of good ones. A lot of like the first season of Daredevil is based off of some of the Frank Miller works, and he's just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
But Guardian Devil, that comic in particular, it's set in that like unique time in the 2000s. Superhero costumes always kind of like are interesting beasts because they sort of evolved into body armor. Like we're drawing lines on everything now to imply paneling, like Batman and the Flash. But this was right before that really took off, before like Batman Begins, and people were like, wouldn't it make sense if this guy wore armor plating?
Yeah.
And so Daredevil...
something to help with that?
Yeah, Daredevil is still running around in like a red onesie, which is a little odd.
I miss the like pure cape shit era though.
Yeah?
Where it was just like, we're wearing this to differentiate ourselves as opposed to, this is tactical bat armor.
I remember those. Yeah, back when like the bat cape was just to make him look big before it was just a glider.
Yeah.
That was actually one time in the comics back in like the 70s, there was an imaginary story where Superman loses his powers and he decides to become a non-powered superhero like Green Arrow and Batman.
That's cool.
And like I said, I'm going to call myself Nova. I've got like this new gimmick cape that's full of all this stuff and I can glide with it. And like Batman just sort of writes that down. and I got all like these gadgets in it. And like, what do you think, Green Arrow and Batman? They look at him and go like, Clark, don't do this. You're going to die.
Yeah.
Like, we've trained for years. You've just started doing this.
Well, you know what? I absolutely, like, I've always said I've liked Superman. A lot of people kind of thumb their noses at the guy. but I like what he represents, and I've always also liked the idea of normals who become super through just hard work.
Right.
So the fact that Superman did that, I gotta give him extra props.
Yeah, it doesn't pan out well because
I can imagine.
He's not great at, I think if I remember in the comic book, there's a point where he is like running around Gotham or Metropolis. Like, no, he's in Metropolis and he sees Batman patrolling Metropolis as like to help out his disabled friend. And he says like, "Ooh, Batman!
I'll take up your patrol, bud."
Yeah, and like, "Ooh, Batman! Now I can test my skills." And like he jumps him, and Batman just beats the crap out of him. Like, what the fuck? And he takes his mask off. Like, oh my god, Superman! And it's just kind of sad where like he gives him a ride home in the Batmobile, and it's like, you got to cut this out, man. Oh, it's bad.
An intervention.
Yeah, it's effectively a superhero intervention.
I wish I could give you some cute anecdotes from Berserk, but it's mostly like your two comic relief characters putzing about in the background while Guts suffers and then cuts a dude in half.
How many? Like, what's the most interesting dude cut in half you remember?
Well, he gets his name, the 1,000 or 100-man killer, when 100 dudes show up to try and put him down. Yeah, and he kills all 100 of them and comes out like damaged but alive.
Is he doing like that like anime thing where he's got like he's lost so much blood that no normal person would be standing, but he's just like, I need some bandages.
No, he's lost so much blood that he like is barely alive, and then he gets taken in by one of the only surviving members of the band, I think. I don't remember. Anyway, yeah, he comes out of that really banged up, manages to like recover over a couple months, and then gets back to cutting dudes in half.
Okay.
Yeah. But of special note is his sword, which it was as mundane as possible. It's called the Dragon Slayer, although dragons don't exist in Berserk.
Okay.
Because if a dragon existed, this sword could kill it.
Okay. I think I get it.
Yeah. And it's totally mundane, but he's just wrecked so much shop with it that it has become a magical item.
It's imbued with blood and hate?
Yeah.
I like that.
He's used it so much to cut down so many demons and really bad dudes that it has become a magical item.
This sword is haunted as shit.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, Guts' story is all about how he barely manages to survive every encounter he's in. Mm-hmm. And it's only because he's being followed around by the comic relief character Puck, who is a fairy.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
That he manages to survive it all, and later a little mage girl named Shirk, or Silk, or Shirk, based on your translation.
Okay.
Yep, and it's the combined effort of both of them that he manages to survive anything at all, because they're both just lobbing heal spells at him the whole time.
So, like, Guts is just charging dick first into problems, and, like, these two fairies are desperately trying to keep him alive during all that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, that sounds like a really, like, dysfunctional D&D group.
Yeah, well, it's amazing to actually see how everything comes together, because he manages to get over his charge into things dick first thing and actually work with the rest of his team, although that mostly works with you soften them up, I'm going to charge in dick first.
Right.
But it's interesting to see how he stops becoming the wounded lone wolf and actually starts becoming the guy who fights for his friends.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
He turns into Ike.
Yeah, he turns into Ike.
Lovely.
That's exactly it. It's a really, like, you get to see how much he gets hurt and grows and then gets hurt and grows. One of my favorite, one of my favorite intros to the series that someone gave me is, come read the story of Guts and all the scars that he's earned. Yeah. And you can see it, like, every cut that he gets, whenever he takes his shirt off for any of those steamy scenes, where he goes full cheesecake, you get to, like, the cuts that he gets, the artist keeps track of and puts a scar on him later.
Do you think, like, he just has, like, this big picture of Guts, like, on his wall, and he just draws another scar on every time he adds a cut in the manga?
That would not blow my mind.
It would make sense.
But all the emotional scars, too. Like, he's a really well-developed character, and that's what I really like about the series in general. He's not overpowered by any means. It's just his will to survive is such that he just won't let himself die.
Yep.
He's called the Sufferer by a bunch of different people. Like, the gods themselves say, you're not destined for anything. You should have died a long time ago. You have no destiny past this. We're not afraid of you.
Right.
And he's just like, I'm going to keep fighting anyway, bitches.
Wild card, bitches!
Yeah,
yeah!
no, that's exactly him. Like, a bunch of the apostles, which are like demon angel things, look at him and go, he's scary for that reason. Because we don't know what the fuck he's supposed to be doing here. Yeah. So that's his whole angle. And, like, he's well characterized. He's well written. For the longest time, he just will not let people touch him. And you think it's because he's like, oh, don't touch me, you're weak.
Right.
But you actually found out it's because his adopted father sold him to a member of the camp of the mercenary group, and the guy raped him as a kid.
Damn.
It was rough. He had a rough childhood.
I can imagine so.
Yeah. So, like, you find out later on, after watching him, like, bat people's hands away when they try and give him a pat on the back.
Oh.
And you find out it's because this guy does not want to be touched.
I can understand.
Yeah. So it's, like, they present him as your standard dark fantasy douchebag, and then it's only through the plot do they actually show that this guy's got a lot going on. Yeah, they make him a very likable and tortured character.
Right. Likeable and tortured is kind of in Daredevil's wheelhouse as well.
Yeah.
Like, the actual plot of Guardian Devil takes you for a bit of a ride. Like, this was back in, like, the late 90s, early 2000s when this was all about, like, the Edge Mastery. And
oh, what a golden era.
Yeah, the story begins with this lady showing up at, like, the offices of Murdoch and Nelson with a baby and says, like, this is a virgin birth. Like, this baby's like the new Jesus. I got to give him to you because some men are after me. And she runs, and he's left holding the child. Like, okay,
fuck do I do about this?
Yeah, and then later on, some other dude comes at him and says, like, "Hey there, Daredevil." Like, what? Like, who? And Matt goes, "Who said that?" But he goes, like, I'm part of, like, this ancient religious order, and I might be an angel. Who knows?
Okay.
And I'm here to tell you that, like, that baby is not the Messiah. He's the Antichrist, and you gotta murder him. Yeah. He will rain suffering and destruction down upon you. Also, and, like, we've existed for thousands of years, directing human investment. We, like, rigging up a gamma bomb out in Texas, irradiating an arachnid down in New York, or getting a truck to, like, spray some goo in your eyes. Remember that? Remember that goo? And Matt's like, yes, I do remember that.
In fact, yes.
Yeah. And then all this awful shit starts happening to, like, every member of his family. Karen comes and says, Matt, I've got AIDS. And, like, oh, God, okay.
Oh, fuck.
And Foggy Nelson gets, like, he has an affair, and then the lady who he was sleeping with turns into a demon and tries to eat his face, and so he shoves her out a window, so now he's wanted for murder.
Oh boy, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, and, like, Daredevil starts to get, like, really dour and revenge-driven, and he starts to think, like, is this baby actually ruining my life? Is it a baby? And he gives it to Black Widow, and he's like, Black Widow, you gotta look after this baby, because I don't appreciate what this baby's doing to me, and, like, get him away from me, because I'm honestly considering chucking this baby off of a cliff. And then he finally, like, says, like, I need to figure out what's going on here. And he goes to Doctor Strange, of all people, and says, do you know who these guys are? Have you ever heard of them? And Doctor Strange goes, no, I have not.
Wow.
I no idea, like, what this order is. But, there's lots of shit that I don't know. I'm the master in not knowing shit. And they go so far as to say, okay, let's just summon the devil and ask him. They bring in, like, Mephisto. Like, he's a stand-up guy. Let's ask him what's going on here. And Mephisto says, like, none of this is going on. Like, don't worry about the Antichrist. We've got him in the stable.
You want to meet him?
Yeah. Like, we got him back here. Like, he's not out there yet.
Yeah.
And he goes, so wait, like, have I just been toting around a regular baby? And Doctor Strange, like, finds, like, this little amulet that was given to Daredevil by this secret order. And he just picks it up and says, like, this thing is just covered in poison, dude. You've been inhaling, like, psychotropic hallucinogens. Yeah, and it's like, you've been conned, dude. None of there's no magic or religion going on here. And then...
I like that.
Yeah, but it introduces some concepts. And, like, there's a bit where a straight-up Hellboy-ass looking dude comes to Daredevil and says, I'm your guardian angel or whatever. And, like, okay, are you on my side? Yes, and I shall... show you the path through all of this. But of course, it turns out he's just like a dude in a robot suit. And pretty much like the last little leg of the journey, it's all just smoke and mirrors and and then Bullseye kills Karen Page because, you know, that's what Bullseye does.
That's what Bullseye do.
And at the very end of all like this, these machinations and these illusions, guess who it is? Mysterio. It was Mysterio the whole time. And it was Mysterio going, I was really sick of being like a second stringer. And I'm dying of latex inhalation from all the masks that I wore. So I wanted to go out on one final big bang. But the Clone Saga was going on with Spider-Man, and I didn't want to get involved in that shit. So I decided to go after Daredevil because, you know, why not? Yeah, why not? Yeah. So I went to Kingpin, who knows that you're Matt Murdock, and I bought your secret identity off of him. So that let me do all like this crazy shit. And like the last page is kind of cool. Well, the last like climax is kind of cool. And Daredevil goes, you know what? Fuck this. You didn't drive me crazy. You poisoned me and you killed people. Like you're just like you're a savage and a lunatic. I'm fine. I can deal with this shit. So you couldn't even do this well, you loser. And practically goads him into suicide.
Oh man!
And it ends with Mysterio just like blowing his brains out.
Oh,
it's kind of sad.
Poor guy.
But also Mysterio dies, but he'll be back because comics, no one ever dies forever.
Yeah. And that's something I was gonna say. It's interesting the difference between philosophies on rebooting things in the West and the East. Like I don't know how many mongooses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many of those that I've read that have done a full reboot when they kind of reach the end of their script.
Right.
I think the list would be pretty short, but that seems to be a trend with Western comics and the like, where they get to the end of it and they're like, okay, now let's reboot this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they get to the end of something where like they mess up the canon so much that they're just we got to bring these people back. I'm pretty sure like the death and the return of Superman was like the first big thing that just changed the status quo forever.
Yeah, and that's we wanted to do something impactful, but now we realize that, you know, the moment's over and what do we do with it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. I think like that's not to say that manga writers and artists and all that don't make mistakes, because God knows they fucking do.
Mm-hmm.
But and you can see that when they write what they're writing, because they'll kind of write themselves into a corner and then they'll pull something out to get it out.
But they do it within like a singular canon.
Yeah, within the continuity of the previous plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, like Western comics are like that too. Usually it was actually just a Doom bot, or I accidentally just got sent back in time, or no, actually you thought I really died there? You fool, that was what I wanted you to think.
Yeah. Well, based on what little, admittedly, that I know of Western comics, it seems that most reboots happen once just too much has been introduced into the universe.
Yeah.
And the kind of the plate of spaghetti gets a little bit too disorderly.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of running on too long, I think that's more than enough for our first episode.
Sounds good.
This has been Left and Right.
Actually, I would like to introduce something to your series, if I may.
Oh boy.
Give us the elevator pitch for the comic you're reading. To someone who has never read it before, what would you, or never even heard of it, what would you say to get them reading it?
Hey, you know the guy who made Dogma? He also wrote a Daredevil comic.
All right. I would buy into that.
Sure, yeah.
Do you like Game of Thrones? Do you like dark fantasy and, well, fantasy in general, and characters who are really well fleshed out? Check out Berserk.
Lovely. This has been Left and Right, and we'll see you next time.